To those of us who have never been through it, China's Cultural Revolution is just a social political movement that took place in China from 1966 to 1976. To many of those who have lived through it, it was probably the worst nightmare of their lives. On the surface, it was to remove all capitalistic elements from China and to remove all traditional and cultural elements from Chinese society. But what this movement really was Mao Zedong's selfish attempt to get rid of his rivals in government and to revive his image to the Chinese people after it was soiled due to his campaign called the Great Leap Forward. Now that campaign ended up creating the largest famine in human history and killing somewhere between 18 and 43 million people. But we will dive into the Great Leap Forward at another time. Now, the Cultural Revolution started off with a campaign to cast away the four olds. The four olds are old ideas, old culture, old customs, and old habits. Basically, this manifested in old books and art being destroyed, museums ransacked, and streets renamed with new revolutionary names and adorned with pictures and sayings of Mao Zedong everywhere. Mao Zedong wanted to eradicate religion first and foremost because without a belief system, the Chinese people are more easily swayed to believe basically whatever he tells them. Many famous temples, really old traditional shrines, and other historical heritage sites were destroyed. Today, when you go to China, most of the temples and the old historic sites that you see were actually recreated because most of them were all destroyed during the Cultural Revolution or the period before that. The second thing Mao wanted to eradicate was education because he believed that people who are educated have the ability to think for themselves, and that can't be allowed. So in the Cultural Revolution, intellectuals bore the brunt of the attacks, teachers being beaten to death with belt buckles, physically tortured, forced to wear dunce hats, bow down and admit their mistakes, were sent to prison, and these prisons were actually called cow sheds. Now keep in mind that the people carrying out these attacks of terror were the Red Guards, consisting of mainly students, and many of them still in elementary and middle school. So a lot of times the students carried out the torture or even killed their own teachers. They were basically like Mao's private army of terrorists. And some might say, well, how can they do that? Why are these young people so evil? Well, you have to think about it like this. When asked today why they carried out all these horrid attacks, a lot of former Red Guards said, well, that was the social norm at that time. When you went to school, that's where you got the orders to go carry out an assault or go ransack a home. And that was what school was for. Now, during the Cultural Revolution, Mao singled out 9 categories of enemies that he wanted people to target. The first one was landlords, the second, rich peasants, the third, counter-revolutionaries, the fourth, bad elements, the fifth, rightists, the sixth, traitors, the seventh, former agents, the eighth, capitalist rollers, and ninth was he wanted to target more specifically than any other was intellectuals. And these are not clearly defined, as in what exactly is a counter-revolutionary or a bad element. People were accused of being class enemies for doing the simplest of things, like forgetting a slogan from the Little Red Book, wearing Western clothing, seeking repayment of a debt, or hoarding a piece of meat. These all are considered violations, and you could be tortured for something as simple as that. All this chaos basically created an environment in China where basically everybody is nervous all the time because you could be accusing someone today, but tomorrow somebody could be accusing you of being a bad element, and you're the one who's arrested and tortured. This also created opportunities for people to hurt each other by reporting false information about each other because of a private vendetta or something related to that. The worst thing is this happened amongst family members. And you would have children being told to spy on their parents to see if they said something bad about Mao. And what one Red Guard leader said pretty much sums it up. Chairman Mao has defined our future as an armed revolutionary youth organization. So if Chairman Mao is our Red Commander-in-Chief and we are his Red soldiers, who can stop us? First, we will make China red from inside out, and then we will help the working people of other countries make the world red, and then the whole universe. The most gruesome aspects of the campaign included numerous instances of torture, murder, and public humiliation. Many people who were targets of struggle could no longer bear the stress and committed suicide. In August and September of 1966, more than 1,700 people were murdered in Beijing alone. In Shanghai, there were at least 704 suicides and 534 deaths related to the Cultural Revolution in September. So with the country in complete chaos by this time, Mao wanted to disperse the Red Guards across the country because he felt that, well, they served their purpose. The chaos has been created, and they did not want them to be able to band together and be able to stand up against them at a later date. So he dispersed them around the country to weaken them. Mao Zedong issued a call for the, quote, down to the countryside movement. So young cadres from cities were sent to live on farms and learn from the peasants. Now, this is a generation of my parents' generation. They all told me how they actually met when they were xiaxiang, or down in the countryside. Mao Zedong died on September 9th, 1976. His hand-picked successor, Hua Guofeng, had the Gang of Four arrested, and more on the Gang of Four later. They included Mao's wife and had been very powerful. Their arrest signaled the end of the Cultural Revolution. For the entire decade of the Cultural Revolution, schools in China did not operate. This left an entire generation with no formal education at all. All of the educated and professional people had been targets for re-education. Families were broken up, and those who hadn't been killed were dispersed across the countryside, toiling on farms or working in labor camps. Because of the campaign against traditional ideas, Chinese people were cut off from the culture that had lasted for thousands of years in China. The exact number of people killed during the Cultural Revolution is unknown, but some have estimated that between 2 to 7 million lives perished. To this date, a lot of former Red Guards have stepped forward to apologize publicly for what they have done during the Cultural Revolution because they deeply regret the harm that they have caused. If you have any other questions about the Cultural Revolution or any other part of Chinese history, please let us know in the comments below so we can cover those topics for you.